What is the worst car ever built? So, to my mind, it's this particular 2002 Mitsubishi Shogun, which I bought for £1,400 2 years ago. It lasted a week before the fuel pump turned itself inside out, stranding me and my family on the bypass, and then it basically just disintegrated on my driveway for 2 weeks while I desperately tried to sell it on eBay before finally scrapping it. With saggy boobs and a face like a dropped lasagna, this early 2000s Fiat Multipla has got to be a contender for one of the worst cars ever built. But it is actually quite practical. It's got 3/3 seating, a very economical diesel engine, and it's got huge amounts of space. So perhaps it's just an ugly car, not a terrible car. So, if practicality is the measure of a good car, then this is definitely one of the worst cars ever built. It's a Velarex Oscar, which is kind of like a mechanical land mermaid made of some sort of tent and the rear end of a Jawa motorcycle. These are apparently the most terrifying mode of transport ever built, and I want one, but I can't afford one. Despite all of this, if you ask in any motoring forum on the internet what's the worst car ever built, one name comes up time and time again. It's dirty, it's loud, it's smelly, and it's about to drive a Trabant into the middle of your screen. This is a 1988 Trabant. 2-stroke, 2-cylinder, 26 horsepower, air-cooled, and it's mine. And I love it. The Trabant is a Cold War car built in communist East Germany by VEB Sachsenring Automobile Work in Zwickau, which is part of Saxony. The VEB stands for basically publicly owned, magnificent company, 5-year plan, wonderful communism. Sachsenring is the name of a local racetrack, which I think they put in for a laugh, and Automobile Work means car factory. The Trabant made its debut in 1958 as the rather magnificent looking P50 with a 500cc 2-stroke air-cooled engine producing a whopping 18 horsepower. 1960 saw the engine upgraded to 600cc for the P60 model, and then in 1963 it was uglified. This was the P601 model, which is the model that was still available up until 1989, when the Iron Curtain was eventually drawn back, revealing 4-stroke engines on the other side. Following reunification, Sachsenring swiftly moved to try and bring the Trabant into the like the mid-20th century would have done, really. Although they did sell in fairly significant numbers, the reputation of the Trabant had preceded it, and it had already been a laughingstock for years in the Western world, so unfortunately it died in about 1991, I think, was the last cars off the production line. Mine's quite a late car, 1987, it's a P601L, and you may well be wondering, why is it the worst car ever built in a lot of people's minds? I think it's quite unfair, and I'll go through it now. Firstly, the elephant in the room. The people of East Germany didn't necessarily want to be segregated off from the rest of the world and forced to buy specific cars and goods, and it became a bit of a symbol of oppression and just unpleasantness among the East German people. That said, there are a lot of people who have very fond memories of them from their childhood, as this is the car that they used to go on holiday in and things like that. So, you know, there's positives and negatives to that. But it became seen as a kind of symbol as if you were forced to buy a car, this is what you'd have to buy. How terrible is that, poor East Germany? Also, elephant in the room number 2, it's got a 2-stroke engine. 600cc, 2-stroke, 2-cylinder under this cloth shroud thing. You can see the 2 spark plugs in the top. Fan cooled. Producing a majestic 26 horsepower. Yeah, you read it right, 26. Now, these were commonplace up until probably the early 60s, I would say, something like that, until 4-stroke engines improved enough that actually it wasn't worth putting a 2-stroke engine in the car. And in fact, most of the cars available with a 2-stroke engine, even at that time, were remnants from after the war, when people were struggling to get mobile, and 2-stroke engines were a quick and easy way of getting around that. As well as being obsolete, 2-stroke engines for the rest of the world was such a rare sight by the end that people were astonished by the amount of smoke and the smells and the 2-stroke just general charm that they exude. And this gave them a bad reputation as well, especially because the way that the exhaust and heating system are intertwined means that if there's a hole in a certain place in the exhaust, a pinhole, you get fumes directly into the cab, and we're going to deal with that in the next episode because that's happened to me.
So I was going to show you how to drive this thing, but my carbon monoxide detector is going off.
So, it's a death trap, essentially, unless the exhaust's alright. That's a good reason for it to be the worst car in the world to a lot of people. Now we get on to the body shell. The body shell was made of poor quality Soviet steel, which to all intents and purposes was water soluble. This was combated in the, I think, early 80s when they started galvanising the frames. Fingers crossed mine's a galvanised frame. But unfortunately, it didn't do much to help the image of the car, as they'd already had a reputation by that point. The body panels are rumoured to be made of cardboard, which is a complete lie, you'll be glad to learn. However, it's a bit worse than that. They're actually made of cotton wool. It's actually cotton byproducts from the clothing industry and resin from the clothes dyeing industry, which have sort of been heat compressed together to make a laminated kind of GRP type thermoplastic. It's actually known for being pretty strong, but it's also almost impossible to get rid of. This became a particular problem after the fall of the Berlin Wall, when many Trabants were abandoned in favour of West German vehicles of higher manufacturing standard. Duraplast can't be recycled, and it can't be burnt without it giving off toxic fumes, so eventually they just ground it up and spread it on the roads in winter to aid grip, like grit salt. So those are the reasons that the majority of the internet thinks that the Trabant is the worst car ever built. However, I think that these reasons are quite unfair, because despite being made of laminated lederhosen and being indestructible like Captain Scarlet, it's actually a very ingenious car, considering that there was a metal shortage, so they couldn't use sheet metal. And, you know, there weren't many cars available, there weren't many car designers available, there weren't many materials, machines, skilled workers, etc., etc. I think they did a pretty good job, and the fact that it exists today just shows that it does have a following. It is a bit of a novelty, but it's a brilliant piece of kit, and I've always wanted one. I managed to pick this one up for a fairly bargainacious price, purely because I bought it a couple of days before Christmas and nobody else bid on it. I like them because they're interesting, because they're two-stroke, and above all, it's easy to work on.
So here's a simple look round at what to expect. We have a pull handle there, another one there with a coat hook on it. This has got retractable seat belts because it's a later model one. Door opener, keep fit windows, nice door pocket there. This is the lighter plug socket thing. It's a weird plug, so it's got a little adapter on it. This is on constantly, so if you leave anything on there, it'll drain your battery. Under here is the bonnet pull. You have to go around all these wires to get to it. Underneath there is also your fuel, so you end up pulling the bonnet fairly often on this. Fuse box, choke, ignition key. You've got on the indicator stalk, obviously left and right for indicators. Pull it back towards you for high and low beam or to flash. Push it away from you for the horn, which doesn't seem to work. We have the window washer, which is a little push button thing. There you are, spray bottle. Wipers, which I will show you. Just put the ignition on a minute. It even has intermittent on this, 2 settings of intermittent. So you've got high, low, intermittent, high, intermittent, low. Lights, another twisty switch, mine's a bit dicey. Rear fog light, retrofitted for the UK market. Rear window heater, which doesn't work at the moment. Hazard lights, that's a little repeater light for the hazard lights. Speedo. Now, the 2 gauges on there for the odometer were actually both options, so this is an extremely high trim level speedo. That fuel gauge doesn't work. It's actually retrofitted, but there's no sender. It would have had this weird LED consumption meter thing in there, which I actually really want to get one and hook it up, but I'm not entirely sure how that works, so we'll have to work that one out. Here we have a radio blank. These are the repeater lights that are normally in the speedo, but unfortunately the bulb holders are a bit knackered on them, so the previous owner put them in there. I'm going to try and put them back. Ashtray, very important. Grab handle, and under here we have the heater controls, which make no sense, and the fuel tap is at the moment. Pointing down is on and to the left is reserve. In the back we have black belts, because this is a German market model and not a Hungarian model. The Hungarian ones didn't have rear seat belts by all accounts. Up here you've got the fancy, quite puffy sun visors. I've got a conversion thing because it's in kilometers per hour, which is great until you're driving at night, which I normally am. Here is the mirror. Now on some of them you turn it round and you have a smoked mirror on the back, which is like your dip mirror, but this doesn't have that. It's either there or not. Hello, that's me. And wind deflectors, interior wind deflectors. Now mine has one. Normally they have two, and they tend to come as standard. We've also got the interior light, which is not door operated. We've had opening rear windows fitted. It's got the rear window heater, which was the thing that spurred them on to make 12-volt electrics 5.0 or 6 volt. It's also got, you can see it in the mirror there maybe, a retrofitted 1980s centre brake light, and Brian Blessed sat next to me. This is my car, and it is a rolling project, so there are various tools in here ready to go. I've been doing some wiring work because the previous owner had bypassed the lights in the dashboard and put them on here, which I'm not particularly a fan of, so I've been tracing them back, and there are the odd bits of wire hanging out and things. It was more or less like that before. I mean, there's the fuse box. This is totally standard, except for mine also isn't bolted down. Other than that, that's just how they look. So, as you can see, security is not a main feature on these. I mean, you can get to all the wires out the back. In fact, I'm pretty sure that Jeremy Beadle could start this without his jar opening hand. But the starting procedure is fuel on, key in the ignition, turn it, off you go. Oh, and choke.
So that's nearly the end, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed seeing my stupid new car. It's not actually that new anymore. I've had it over a year. So the next video is going to be about general maintenance I've had to do to keep it on the road, running it as my daily for 3 months when the Clio was off the road, and just general MOT prep, that sort of thing. In the next video, there's also going to be a proper start up and drive as well. But in the meantime, here's some badly shot footage of me driving it through town, just so you get a feel for the thing. Thanks for watching, guys.
And then down here we have the nonsensical heater controls, and there is no fan, so if you want any forced air you have to drive faster basically. On the right is the fuel tap, it's off at the moment, down is on, and left is reserve. Apparently the Hungarian models don't have such decadent western accoutrements as rear seat belts, but mine does, so there.